Hush, the knocking matches my doorbell. The knocking outside my apartment door has the exact same rhythm as my own doorbell. Not a similar rhythm, not a close approximation. The exact three-note pattern. Short, short, long. My doorbell has made since the day I moved in. I want to write this down while it's still fresh, because I've noticed that the longer I wait to explain something like this, the more my brain smooths it over into something reasonable. Oh, here, miss. My name doesn't matter for this. What matters is the building. A 6-unit walk-up on the east side, built sometime in the 60s. The kind of place where the radiators clanked at 6 a.m. And you learn your neighbors' schedules, whether you want to or not. I moved into 4B 8 months ago. The listing had been suspiciously cheap for the neighborhood, and the property manager When I asked why, he said something about a job relocation, and changed the subject fast enough that I noticed, filed it away, and then forgot about it, the way you forget most small warnings. The doorbell in 4B is original to the building, an actual mechanical chime box mounted inside the closet by the door, the kind that plays 3 notes when you press the button outside. Ding, ding, dong. Short, short, long. I'd never thought about it as a pattern until the night it started showing up somewhere it shouldn't have been. It was a Tuesday, a little after 11. I was on the couch, half asleep with a show playing. I wasn't watching, and I heard knocking at the door. Not the doorbell, actual knuckles on wood. Short, short, long. I sat up. It's a strange thing to notice, how a sound can be wrong before you've consciously figured out why. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. I told myself I'd imagined the rocking is knocking, that my brain had pattern matched something meaningless. I'm as tired. Then I was tired. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, just the buzzing overhead light and Frank's doormat across the way, the one that says wipe your paws, even though nobody in this building has a dog. I went back to the couch. I didn't open the door. Evan, I want to be honest that even that first night, some part of me didn't want to open the door. And I didn't examine that feeling closely enough to ask why. I didn't think about it again until Thursday, when it happened twice. The first time was around 9 p.m. and I was washing dishes. Short, short, long, and then a pause just slightly too long to be someone waiting for an answer, and then nothing. I checked the peephole. Empty hallway. The second time was just past midnight, and this is the one that made me start paying real attention, because I was already in bed, already half asleep. And the knock came exactly as I was drifting off. Short, long timed. It felt like, and right as consciousness was leaving me, I lay there in the dark, heart going, and made myself get up and check. Empty hallway again. But this time, when I turned to go back to bed, I noticed something I hadn't before. The little chime box in the closet, the actual doorbell mechanism, has a faint mechanical click just before it plays its 3 notes. The sound of the striker reset. Ting, kind, fiend. I'd heard that click my whole time living there and never thought about it. I hadn't heard it that night. Only the knock. Which meant, obviously, that it wasn't the doorbell circuit doing anything. It was something outside, replicating the pattern with its knuckles. I told myself this was almost funny. A prankster neighbor, someone who'd somehow learned my doorbell's tune and thought it was a good joke. I decided that if it happened again, I'd just open the door immediately, before whoever it was could retreat down the stairwell. Happened again 2 nights later, and I did open the door immediately, fast enough that I heard my own footsteps slap against the floor, fast enough that there's no way anyone could have gotten more than a few feet from my door before I threw it open. When the hallway was empty. Not distantly empty, immediately empty, the kind of empty where you can see both ends of the hall and the stairwell door at the far end, which was closed, and which makes a distinct groan on its hinges that I would have heard if someone had just gone through it. I stood in my doorway a long time that night, in my socks, feeling stupid, feeling watched, unable to decide which feeling was worse. The next morning I mentioned it to Frank, my neighbor across the hall. An older guy, retired, keeps to himself mostly, but we'd developed the kind of low-key rapport you get from years of taking out the trash at the same time. I asked if he'd heard anything odd at night. He said no, but then paused in a way that made me think he was deciding whether to say more, and eventually admitted that sometimes, late, he heard someone in the hallway pacing outside his own door. Never knocking, just pacing, stopping right in front of his apartment and staying there a while before moving on. I asked how long a while usually was. He said he'd never timed it. He said it in a way that made it clear he had, in fact, timed it. Didn't want to tell me the number. I started sleeping badly. I want to be precise about what badly meant, because at the time I told myself I was just anxious, not that anything was actually happening to me. I'd wake at odd hours, 2:47, 3:15, always a little after the knock, if there'd been one, as though my body had learned to associate the sound with waking even in sleep, even before the sound had fully registered. On the 9th day since it started, I did something I probably should have done from the beginning. I set my phone to record audio overnight, propped against the hallway-facing wall, and went to bed. I didn't sleep much. Around 1 a.m. I heard it. Short, long, close enough to the door that I flinched under the blanket, close enough that some old animal part of me refused to get up and look. In the morning, I played back the recording, expecting 3 knocks in silence. What I got instead, underneath the knocking, at a much lower volume. I almost missed it. Had to replay it 4 times with headphones. Was a second version of the same pattern. Slower. Uneven. Like someone rehearsing the rhythm, getting the spacing wrong, correcting, trying again. And short, long, short, long, short, long, like something learning it. I called Aldous, the property manager, and asked, as calmly as I could manage, whether he'd had any other reports of noise on my floor. He said no, not really, though he did mention, again in that too casual way, that Unit 4B had some old wiring issues that predated my lease, and that the previous tenant had complained about sounds in the walls before breaking the lease. He said it like it was a minor, boring fact. The kind of thing you mention about water pressure. I asked what kind of sounds. He said he didn't remember exactly. I don't think that was true. I called my sister that night, mostly because I needed to say the situation out loud to someone who wasn't already tangled up in it. And she listened and made the jokes you'd expect. And then, near the end of the call, asked a question that stuck. Why? Doing more than anything, Aldous had said. Has it ever knocked while someone else was over? I thought about it. It hadn't. Not once. In 9 days. Had the knocking happened while I had company. It only happened when I was alone. She didn't say anything else about it. Neither did I. Neither did I. But after we hung up, she texted me a single line. Call me if it happens again. Don't open the door. And farting. The knocking kept a strange, patient schedule after that. Never every night. Never predictable enough to prepare for. But always, without exception. On nights I was alone. It stopped happening at midnight and started happening earlier, closer to when I'd actually get home from work. As though it were adjusting itself to my schedule rather than the clock. 2 weeks in, I changed my locks. It didn't stop. 3 weeks in, I stopped answering the door for anyone, even the mail carrier, without checking the peephole first for a full 10 seconds, which is a strange, humiliating thing to catch yourself doing. Standing in your own hallway, holding your breath, staring through a fisheye lens at nothing. The recordings kept picking up the second layer, underneath the first. It kept getting closer to correct. By the 4th week, the rehearsal version and the real version were almost indistinguishable. The same spacing, same weight behind the long note. Whatever it was getting good at being my doorbell. I want to be honest about the night everything changed. because I've gone over it enough times that I no longer trust my own certainty about the order of events, only the outcome. It was late, close to 1 a.m. and I was standing in the kitchen, not in bed, which meant that for the first time since this started, I was already up and alert when it happened. Short, long, knuckles on wood, unmistakable, close. And then, a half-second later, before I'd even moved toward the door, the actual doorbell rang, the mechanical one, but the real chime from the closet box, striker and all, ding, ding, boong, both at once, or near enough. 2 versions of the same 3 notes, layered, the knock and the chime, nearly in sync, off by no more than a beat. I did not open the door. I stood very still in my kitchen and understood, in a way I can't fully explain, except that the understanding arrived all at once and complete. That the knocking on the door and the doorbell in the closet had never been 2 separate things happening near each other. They had been the same thing, learning to happen at the same time, from the same place. And the reason the striker click had gone missing on some nights, and not others, wasn't because something outside was mimicking my doorbell. It was because, on the nights the click was missing, the sound hadn't come from outside my door at all. It had come from inside the closet, where the chime box has always been mounted to the wall that backs onto the stairwell, the wall Aldous never fully explained. In the unit with wiring issues nobody wanted to describe in detail, that the last tenant left over sounds nobody wanted to name. I moved out 6 weeks after that. Aldous didn't ask why, and I didn't offer an explanation, because I didn't have one he'd have accepted, and because some part of me suspects he already had one of his own that he'd decided not to share, same as he had with the tenant before me. I know who lives in 4B now. I looked the building up online a few months ago, mostly out of a compulsion I haven't fully forgiven myself for, and found a single post on a local forum from someone asking, almost offhand, if anyone else in the building has this in the duck. Ask knocks before it rings. Nobody had answered them yet. I didn't either.